Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
There's something different about the desert in the western United States. There's just a vibe to it that's different from anywhere else on the entire planet, as if the desert itself is sentient, and if we wrong it, it will make it even. I think it's something to be respected. I don't know about the skinwalkers or wendigos or whatever, but there is definitely something going on with the desert itself, not just the life that lives in it. Sorry if this seems vague. I'm just not sure how to word it.
It's certainly a dangerous environment with harsh elements. Driving through Arizona made me feel like I was on a different planet. It was unreal. I'll never forget that evening drive. I went out west last year, was also my first ever flight, and it was really surreal. I went to Zion National Park, and driving in the early morning felt like we were on Halo or something. I'm not sure if the desert is sentient, but I think the harshness and relentlessness of it makes it seem like it has some vendetta against humans. What do you think makes it different from other deserts, Anon?
I don't know, man. It just feels alive. I grew up in the desert as a kid, and it's just this weird feeling. Like you're in a place that you're allowed to be, so long as you tread lightly and with respect.
Would you say it's negative energy overall?
Not op, but I've been in the desert a lot. It's not a feeling of fear, but respect. You are just a human in an environment that is as beautiful as it is deadly. As the OP said, tread carefully and be prepared. You do this and treat life with respect, and you will feel it open up to you on a deep level.
Been living out in the Vegas and Henderson area my whole life. Used to hike and camp out in the desert a lot. Every time I go out into that vast open rocky world, my mind slips a bit. I know where I'm going almost. I'll find hidden water or cool-looking burrows. The smell of the desert wilds after rain is like no other. Laying on a boulder and gazing at the night sky so clear is always breathtaking to me. It's like things vibrate in just the right way. Don't get me wrong, I love the forest and seas, but my body aches to return to the brush and dust of my desert home. Seen some /x/ related things out here, but the desert itself feels almost mythical to me. I don't know if that's how you feel, OP, but thought I'd drop my 2 cents.
This probably isn't too paranormal, but I'm gonna chalk it up to right place at the right time kind of deal. I'm in Phoenix, by the way. Be me. Edgy 17-year-old black metal fan. I'm still a black metal fan, but not edgy about it. Get really into Satanism and witchcraft and so on. Find my stepmom's copy of the Necronomicon. I think it's real because LOLWTF is a Lovecraft. Start getting really into it. See a spell called The Watcher. Summons a demon to watch over someone. Appears as a knight with a sword, an old man, or a giant dog. Seems like the least harmful of all of them. Why not .jpg? Go to a very secluded area of the desert outside of town. Draw a circle with salt. I think it was a while ago. Do some other things. Build a fire, say the magic words. Wait. Waiting. I'm still waiting. Here's something. Oh shit, what have I done? See a giant coyote? Coyotes aren't supposed to be giant, FYI. The coyote just stares at me. I freak out and remember the banishing words Eden Nazu or something similar. I think it was almost like the coyote shrugged its shoulders as if to say, fine, be that way. Then it wandered off. Put out fire and nope out of there. Like I said, I'm sure it was a right place, right time type of thing. But that coyote was goddamn gigantic looking.
Several years ago, I was a long-haul truck driver. In this instance, I was on I-40 in Newberry Springs, California. I'd probably been through this area 30 or 40 times, but had never really paid any attention to the name of the town. While traveling through the area, I noticed a woman standing in the desert dressed in bright white. It really caught me off guard because it was so out of place. I looked when I went by and she appeared to be in Middle Eastern type clothing, but she appeared to be bright white. I couldn't really make out any facial features as well, as her feet and hands appeared distorted, almost like she was levitating. I called my sister and told her about it immediately. I told her the name of the town and what I saw, so she got on Google to see if anything like that had been reported, but it hadn't. 36 hours later, I pulled into a rest area in Dragoon, Arizona to go to bed for the night. I was scrolling through Facebook and an article caught my attention. It said something to the effect of a tractor-trailer car accident in Newberry Springs, California. Now keep in mind, I never paid any attention to the name of that town before, so I clicked on the article to find out that right after I came through, there were a few cars and a tractor-trailer that were involved in an accident. I think there ended up being about 5 fatalities in the accident. I immediately thought back to the woman I had seen standing in the desert. My thoughts was maybe she was death waiting to usher these souls to the other side.
Be 16. Be dumb teen living in the high desert in California. I like to go out with dumb friends, shoot bats with pellet gun during summer, about half a mile from the nearest road, near some dirt bike trails out near USP Victorville. Hear growling. I think it's a coyote. Battle stance. Walk close to sound. See a half-eaten coyote corpse. Blood still flowing, it was a fresh kill. Shine lights around catch eyes looking at us from 9 o'clock. The thing is big. It lurches for the rest of the corpse. It looks like the mix of an Irish wolfhound and bobcat, mottled fur with cat paws. It pulls a corpse into the brush. My friend shoots a pellet in the direction, and the other 2 of us decide it's time to leave. Book it on the road. Never go bat hunting again. After looking through possible dog breeds, it could have been a Tibetan Mastiff. It was at least 4 feet high, and it ripped up that corpse like it was a toy. 0 out of 10 would not recommend coming across in the dark.
I had a job working at a secured military facility out in the remote Utah desert. When I was hired, the man who trained me asked if I believed in ghosts, because if not, I would before I left the job. He was kind of strange, though, just like the rest of us graveyard shift workers, so I never gave it much thought. He shadowed me for a week, showing me where I was allowed to go, where the restricted areas were, and he introduced me to the occasional worker that we ran into. We worked in a huge warehouse that was divided into 7 sections. There were only 4 of us working the night shift. There was an area that felt really creepy, and I mentioned it. It was in the nicest section of the warehouse, the quality control department, which was well lit and even heated. Easily the most comfortable section. My trainer gave me a nervous look and hustled me out of there. Once we got outside, he told me an inspector died by self-termination in there. Don't talk about him, though, or else he may show up. He told me if I talked about ghosts, he would physical training my butt and recycle me all the way down to the janitor, so don't talk about ghosts inside. He then proceeds to tell me about 7 deaths that have occurred there, the most gruesome of which was 3 men killed by an explosion on the 5th floor of the building across the street. Their bodies were found 2 days later on top of our building. The photographer sent to document the explosion went on our building to take pics and discovered them. 2 self-terminations, the inspector having only died 7 months before. 1 man killed for cheating on another man's wife. He tried to make it look like an accident, a heart attack. And the last one was a trespasser on base. He was some UFO guy who snuck on base and was shot by our guards in the tool room. Fast forward a few weeks. After my training, I began settling into my new job. But the stories my trainer had told me stuck with me. I would always hear weird noises, but I figured as long as I minded my own business, the ghosts wouldn't bother me. Whenever I encountered another worker, we would chat a bit to pass the time. Everyone was friendly enough. One night in the break room, a man came in full Class A uniform. He paused and glared straight at me. I stood up and introduced myself, figuring he was one of the military guys checking on a project. He never shook my hand. He never said a word. As he glared at me, he simply vanished into thin air.
I've told this one on /x/ before. It's not too dramatic, but it freaked me out. Working in the summer, work takes me further from civilization than I've ever been in the Utah desert. On top of Mesa, I feel like I'm on top of the world and very exposed, storm brewing, and if we get rained out, we are trapped far from anyone for days. Boss and friend go off to get a view of the side of Mesa. I stay behind and fill up my water bottle at the truck. Start after them across exposed, flat sandstone. Sudden noise off to my left as if a huge boulder was dragged across the exposed stone. Lasts a few seconds. Nothing there. No boulders, no animals, no one. Heart pounding, wishing I'd brought a gun. Catch up to the boss and co-worker, ask if they heard it, visibly shaken. Look at me funny and say they did not. Rain starts and we bail. I have no idea what it was, but I felt exposed and my nerves were on edge. It may not have been anything, but I was seriously frightened at the time. I'm certain I heard something loud.
This is a third-hand story with as little poetic license as necessary. I am confident I have recorded the details with a high degree of accuracy. It may get confusing, but here we go. What I know of this story came from my close friend Doug. I have known Doug for many years. He is a successful businessman and I would never question his integrity. Several months ago, Doug came by my office and while we visited, he related the details of a conversation he had with one of his longtime customers. To be honest, Doug and I both don't know what to make of this strange conversation with his customer. His story may just be the raving of a schizophrenic, although the credibility of the person who shared their first-hand account with Doug would make a diagnosis of schizophrenia difficult to imagine. That would at least make sense. But it's an interesting story nonetheless. After writing it down, I emailed the story to Doug for verification. He confirmed I had written the account down as accurately as he felt possible. With that introduction, here is what Doug told me. I have this customer who sat down with me at my office and posed a very strange question. He asked, "Do you believe in UFOs?" I have only known him for a short time, but I do know he was in the US Marine Corps and he has enough accolades and credentials that I would not question his integrity. He comes across as extremely reputable, which makes his story both intriguing and bizarre. To protect his identity, and since I do not have his permission to relate this story, I will refer to him as John. I told John that I, of course, do believe some things have been seen flying and at the same time been unidentifiable. What I don't know is what they were, since of course they are, by their very nature, unidentifiable. That is as logical of a statement as I could have made. John appeared to have accepted my answer. He took it as an affirmative, which is to say that I do in fact believe in UFOs. Crossing that bridge, the strange story began to unroll out of John's mouth. The following is the story told by John to my friend Doug. The story John shared revolved around an elderly friend who lived close to him. I will call his elderly friend Tom. One day, Tom asked John if in fact he believed in UFOs. John answered in the affirmative. Tom proceeded. He said he had something he wanted to show John. But first, before sharing his story, he must take John to a site in Las Vegas. Once the evening had settled in and the sun had long disappeared behind the Red Rock Mountains, the two of them drove to the corner of Tropicana and Decatur Boulevard, just a few miles west of the Las Vegas Strip. This site is well known by longtime Vegas residents who live on the west side of the city. The name it is known by is the Pits. Due to its strange and varied dirt mounds, it is favored by dirt bike enthusiasts. And although it is not far from the famous Las Vegas Strip, it remained undeveloped due to several reasons. The first would be the cost of leveling the ground, and the second would be its location being part of a major wash heading into Las Vegas. The city of Las Vegas has contended for years with flash floods, and washes are not the best sites to develop. When they arrived at the Pits, they pulled off into the desert and walked to a spot where Tom indicated they should stop. Tom began surveying the area with what John assumed was a metal detector. After some searching, he found a spot where the detector came alive. He placed a rock at that point. Then he went off in another direction until the detector sounded again. Another rock was placed at the second point. Again, he repeated his search for a spot in the dark that would complete an equilateral triangle. Sure enough, the detector sounded at the exact spot. He placed a third rock. All the time searching and setting up the triangle, Tom kept checking his watch. With all three corners of the triangle revealed, he began to feel his way to the true center of the triangle. Judging his position relative to the 3 points of the triangle and feeling confident he was in position, he stepped aside and placed John dead center in the triangle. Tom stepped back, staring at his watch, and waited. "John," he said, "in just a minute you will feel a pulse through your body. The points of the triangle are places where transmission pillars have been buried deep in the earth. In the center of these transmission pillars where you now stand is where the transmission waves will be generated. Where they are transmitting to, I don't know. But I do know these transmissions occur at regular intervals during the late night, and when they occur you can feel them. They are about to transmit any minute now." They both remained quiet as they waited. Suddenly, just as Tom had described, John felt a sensation in the darkness. John described a physical force like an electrical pulse rolling up his body from his toes to his head. It was as if a group of people were surrounding you with rolling pins, and they were rolling them up your body from your toes to the top of your head. It didn't last too long, and just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. It was never made clear to John how Tom knew about these transmission events. He was only told that for whatever reason, Tom had known about certain alien information for many years and was sworn to secrecy. With that experience under John's belt, Tom felt confident that John was prepared for what Tom felt compelled to show him. The only reason Tom gave for showing John any of this was just in case. Next, Tom took John on a drive outside of Las Vegas. They headed west on the Blue Diamond HWY, leading toward Pahrump, Nevada. The town of Blue Diamond is about 15 to 20 miles southwest of Las Vegas. At some point near Blue Diamond, Tom drove off the highway and headed into the desert. Tom told him that what he was about to show him he needed to get off his chest. He had information about aliens among us and was sworn to secrecy. He had kept these secrets for as long as he could, which John assumed was many years. At Tom's advanced age, he wanted someone else to know some of what he knew. The headlights bounced in front of their car, illuminating the dirt road that led deeper into the desert. As cacti and sagebrush rushed past them, Tom confessed that by spilling the beans, his life would be in danger. Regardless of the consequences for both of them, they drove on. Moments later, they pulled up to a door in the middle of nowhere set into the side of a rocky bluff. This door, this location, this place, was what Tom wanted John to see. They only stayed a moment when Tom said, "We have to leave right now. They know we are here." As they drove away from the mysterious door, suddenly lights appeared to them as headlights materialized virtually out of nowhere and began following them. Tom picked up speed. At several points, the lights tailed them no less than 3 feet off their back bumper. Jolts of anxiety, fear, and panic swept through both Tom and John. Without warning, the lights went black. Tom craned his neck to look back. No lights or vehicles were visible, only darkness. That was the last time John would see Tom. Days after this strange experience, John sought Tom out but was unable to find him. Tom's home was empty and none of his neighbors knew where he went. None of them saw him leave. The neighbor across the street claimed to see men in white hazmat suits take all Tom's belongings. After several days, not being able to move past the strange events, John decided he would revisit the transmission site. Late one evening, while driving home from work, he made a detour to the pits. As he approached, he anticipated pulling into the desert area where he and Tom had once parked. He discovered that he wouldn't be able to pull off the road due to a dirt berm having been erected. He instead parked his truck on the shoulder of the road and got out. He made his way to the berm and climbed up. Instead of the dark, vacant area he had visited days before, now before him was a lot of construction equipment and massive construction lights flooding the entire area. He climbed up the berm and, while resting on his stomach, looked over to see what all the commotion was about. No sooner had he begun looking when suddenly, as if on cue, floodlights all around the construction site turned and pointed their beams directly at his position. Not wanting to feel paranoid, he quickly left the area and drove home. Later, he learned the city had started construction on a flood retention basin and park at the site. John still couldn't shake the feelings left by this experience. Where was Tom? Considering what was going on at the transmission site, did any of it have to do with Tom? Eventually, he shared the experience with a couple of his friends. They, of course, were curious and wanted him to show them the door in the desert. After some coaxing, John agreed and they headed out. They took his friend's vehicle and John sat shotgun. At one point, as they were driving the dirt road, John began to feel nervous and admittedly scared. He considered telling his friend to take a wrong turn, acting as though he had forgotten the directions on how to get there. He knew if he acted as if he didn't remember the location of the door, he'd take a lot of heat from his friends. Instead of deflecting, he found himself drawn closer in the direction of the door. His own curiosity had gotten the best of him. As they drove along, they saw up ahead an old pickup truck that had pulled off alongside the dirt road. As they approached, they could make out an extremely tall, thin man leaning against the driver's side door. His dress was casual and he sported a pair of dark sunglasses. They pulled up behind the truck and the tall man walked up to the driver's window, bent down, and asked them what they were doing out there. "We're just driving around," said the driver, and they all gestured in the affirmative. "You need to turn around," he told them. "You've driven onto private property." "Who are you?" they said, pushing back with a little attitude, not willing to immediately comply. "I'm the law out here," he said, but he wore no uniform, nor did he flash a badge. The tall man offered no sign of authority. John's friends were unimpressed. The tall man straightened, paused, then slowly walked around the vehicle and lowered his head into the passenger's window where John sat. John's window was down. When he was face to face with John, he raised his sunglasses and looked directly into his eyes. What John saw in the tall man's eyes sent a shock throughout his entire body. Looking back at him were not the eyes of a man. The tall man's eyes were more feline than human, and he addressed John by his full name. "John Blank," he said. "Consider this your warning. Do we have an understanding?" John said yes, and with that they drove away. That is the extent of the story as told by John to my friend Doug. I don't know anymore. I have lived in Las Vegas for over 50 years and have never seen a door in the desert. But there are parts of the desert around Blue Diamond that are not accessible to the public.
I was driving down a highway in Southern California, a little after 10 at night. I had the windows down because it was cool and I didn't want to have to use the AC. Drove past a couple of houses. Pretty sure they were growing weed. Could smell it. I drive around a curve and there's a light up ahead. I all of a sudden grow extremely tired. Didn't think much of it then, but now I can't help but feel it wasn't normal. I get closer to the light and realize it's a motel. Still a ways away from my destination, so I decided to get a room. I park my car and get out, and the receptionist is waiting at the door for me. She said the lights just went out in the reception area and she's lighting up candles. I was exhausted at the time and thought nothing of it. She asks me how long I'll be staying, and I tell her just tonight. As soon as she hands me the key, I hear a murmuring coming from down the hallway. Realize it's more than one voice. They're all repeating the same thing in unison. I'm not sure, but I think they said, "Welcome to the Hotel California."
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.